Very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi, and the Dynasties of 2024 polls. Well, because 2024 Lok Sabha elections, the general elections, that's pretty much anything everybody can talk about right now. Anything that is happening under the sun, you have to look at it from the political lens, because 2024 polls are right around the corner. And today we're specifically diving into a topic that has been a cornerstone of Indian politics, if I could say that: dynasties. Privileged political dynasties. It's no secret that a significant portion of our Lok Sabha comprises of these dynast members of parliament, and politics in India has often been seen as a privileged family heirloom. With the 2024 polls right on the horizon and Prime Minister Modi's spotlight on Parivarvad, family-run parties, it has reignited this particular conversation and debate. So let's together unravel the intricate layers of political dynast culture in Indian politics. I really want all the viewers to get down in the comment section with their own opinions as well. What do they think about dynastic politics and the dynasts that are right now in the lower house of the parliament, in the parliament in general, ahead of 2024 polls? What drives this particular phenomenon is something that we're going to focus on today. What implications does it carry for policy making in the parliament? It's time to get into the heart of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, and explore the roots of dynastic politics. But before that, before I introduce to you my guests, my colleague Ghulam Jilani and Tehseen Poonawala, who's a political analyst, they're both going to be with us shortly. But before we do that, News9 Plus has put out their latest documentary series. It's called Family Planning. And we'll take a little snippet of that, understand what we're talking about essentially, and then we'll come back for more. Take a look. Family Planning by News9 Plus.
ये जो विरासत और वारसा बारिश के रूप में चल रहा है, डायनेस्टी के रूप में चल रहा है, कोई डायनेमिक्स है ही नहीं। एक परिवार के लोग ही उस पार्टी के अध्यक्ष बने, उस पार्टी का पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड बने। अब देखिए हिंदुस्तान की बर्बादी कहाँ से हो रही है। जम्मू कश्मीर से शुरू करिए, पंजाब में देखिए, आप हरियाणा में देखिए, उत्तर प्रदेश देखिए, झारखंड देखिए, आप तमिलनाडु में जाइए, ये परिवार ही पार्टी चलाता है। ये लोकतंत्र के लिए बहुत से बड़ा खतरा है।
I don't see why you people have a problem with a lineage. And why just in politics?
As Nepo kids, we really don't get that much of an opportunity to prove ourselves.
Can a lawyer's son be a good lawyer? Yes. I consider it an affront to democracy.
In one statement, Mr. Modi is able to kill two birds, two of his opponents at the national level and at the state level.
Politics in India is often viewed as a privileged family heirloom, handed down to sons, daughters, spouses and nephews. While the Nehru-Gandhi family often dominates the discourse about dynasty, the culture of nepotism prevails across political parties and regions. From the Abdullahs of Kashmir to the Karunanidhis of Tamil Nadu, the Scindias and the Yadavs in the Hindi heartland, to the Sangmas in the northeast, India has about 34 powerful political families.
Dynasties have been important in Indian politics, and they've been particularly important because there are two types of dynasties. One have been political dynasties, like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, his father Motilal Nehru ji, he was in Congress politics, then he came in, and then his daughter becomes Prime Minister, and Indira Gandhi's son Rajiv Gandhi becomes Prime Minister. The question mark comes after the death or the murder and killing of Rajiv Gandhi, when Sonia Gandhi is not able to take it over directly, but she stays the power behind the throne, and then Rahul Gandhi has not been able to take the mantle of the Congress party, but he remains their most important leader, and there's Priyanka Gandhi also coming.
I consider it an affront to democracy. we are the world's largest democracy. The perpetuation of political dynasties, not on merit but on the accident of birth, is fundamentally antithetical to democracy. Let's be clear. And it also spawns, nurtures an atmosphere of unacceptable psychophancy. It stifles inner party democracy.
What would be the credibility of Mr. Omar Abdullah were he not the son of his father? And similarly for Farooq Abdullah, who was Dr. Farooq Abdullah, least interested in politics, I think nowhere near the stature of a Sheikh Abdullah, who was a genuine people's leader and a peasant leader and built the political capital.
Well, so Sheikh Abdullah, Sangmas, the Gandhis, the Nehru Parivar and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's constant targeting of these political dynasties. Parivarvad is part of that Tushtikaran, Parivarvad and Bhrashtachar trio. Of course, joining me on the broadcast to expand this particular discussion, Ghulam Jilani, my colleague from News9, man behind this particular journalistic piece, and Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst. A very warm welcome to you, Tehseen. Tehseen, it's interesting that I enjoy talking with you on these particular topics because it's not a debate. We're not trying to prove a point. We can have a nice discourse about this one as well. But before I go on to you, let me just quickly go to the man who's made this documentary as well. Ghulam, lay bare in front of the viewers the semantics of this particular journalistic piece. Why do you think it's important that we talk about this ahead of 2024? And 1/3, really, is that the number?
Hi Kabir, thank you for having me and Tehseen. Hi Tehseen. So see, when we talk about dynasts, Indian politics is replete with dynastic families. It's not just most of the times the attention is given to Nehru Gandhi family, but they are not the only dynasts. There was a bigger and the longest dynasty is Scindias. Most of these politicians are now with BJP. They started 300 years ago, even before India became a democracy. And they score over Nehru Gandhi dynasties because there was a time in Nehru Gandhi family between 1991 and 1996 when no representative from the family was in the parliament. But that has not been the case with Scindias. Right from 1957, each and every assembly or parliament has had a representative from the family. So when we talk of dynasties, we see Prime Minister Modi often targeting dynasts, Nehru Gandhi family in particular. He targets Yadavs of UP. He has also targets other dynasts. But we saw what happened with Pawars, in Maharashtra.
Right.
What happened with Thakres in Maharashtra. So recent crisis in both these families almost finished these two families. We saw in Amethi, Rahul Gandhi lost the elections. We saw in UP, Yadavs are nowhere to be seen in UP, but still the current parliament has 30% dynasts. The figures which we have put out in documentary show, and this is not our figure. This is a research by Trivedi Center of Political Data. This is a research by New York University based academicians, and this is a research taken from the Election Commission of India data. So 30% of overall parliamentarians in existing Lok Sabha have dynastic connections. Of these, 25% of BJP parliamentarians, 25% are dynasts. So whenever elections comes, we see Prime Minister Modi and all BJP leaders targeting dynasts. But it is not just a Nehru Gandhi family thing. It exists all across parties, across regions, and it is very much part of the system part of the political system that we live in. And if you look at the documentary, one of the analysts clearly says that we have this, my baap culture, right from the monarchy to British rule, then to democracy. So that my baap culture still exists in India. And also, not many people join politics. I mean, not many fresh faces join politics. It is still considered an unattractive profession perhaps because it involves a lot of money. So that's why we wanted to look at the current parliament and how maybe we wanted to check how dynasty culture is going away. But what we found surprisingly is that it is not going away, and it is going to be there at least till 2024, especially because of the fact that 2024 has already started. We have already had these two blocks, one of the NDA and one of the India, which is led by Congress. So these two blocks will obviously depend on the Dynast, and that is why these Dynasts will be important in 2024.
All right, quite eloquently put over there. Tehseen, I'm going to come to you now. The documentary begins with a real nice monologue coming from the Prime Minister, where he's taking the names of these states. He says Jharkhand, he says Tamil Nadu, he says, ye sab parivar chala rahe hain inko. The reflection has been put across by Ghulam very nicely that, the Samajwadi Party has in fact lost its bastion. All these parties in Maharashtra see what's happening. He's given us these examples. But Omar Abdullah right in the start says, why is lineage so wrong? I don't understand why people have a problem with lineage. There's another talking head that says, lawyer ka beta bhi ek acha lawyer ho sakta hai. That's a possibility, isn't it? So what's your viewpoint on, first and foremost, even as we start rolling this ball, what's your viewpoint on political dynasts ahead of 2024?
So at the onset, thank you so much for having me on the show, and many, many congratulations to my friend Ghulam for this fantastic work. And it seems like a very interesting documentary. So congratulations to him and to TV, to News9. So many congratulations to all of you all. Let me put two very important points across. Point number one, and I think this is where it's pertinent, that there is a problem in India to do with dynastic policies. This cuts across party lines. It is true that political parties, the Gandhis are of course the most in focus, but political parties, everybody is involved in dynasty, and dynasty is now become a business. But does that give the Honorable Prime Minister moral right to target dynasties? No, simply because nobody is a bigger hypocrite than the Bharatiya Janata Party, or as I like to call them, the Bada Jhoota Party. And here's why. If the Prime Minister is so serious about not doing dynasty politics, so serious, all the Honorable Prime Minister has to do is look at his right, look at the Honorable Home Minister Amit Shah ji, and ask him on what basis is Jai Shah in BCCI? What is Jai Shah doing in BCCI? How many of your viewers know that Amit Shah ji was the Gujarat Cricket Association in charge, after which Jai Shah came in, and that's the route he's taken to BCCI? Is that not dynasty? Why is Jai Shah in BCCI? What is Jai Shah's contribution to BCCI? Leave Jai Shah out. You might say he's a private individual. Leave him out. Let's ask the question, what is Anurag Thakur ji's contribution, Pankaja Munde ji's contribution, Poonam Mahajan's contribution, Dushyant Raje's contribution? All of these people who are in politics, and I can name large. In fact, there are more dynasts in the BJP today in numbers than in any other political party. Why? Leave that aside. Let's even go down to the RSS. How many of your viewers know that even in the RSS, there is dynasty? Mohan Bhagwat ji's father was a pracharak whose book the Honorable Prime Minister's Gujarat Chief Minister released. Even Mohan Bhagwat ji is a dynast. How many of your viewers know that? Dynasty is even prevalent in the RSS. Piyush Goyal ji, his father was an RSS. Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, his father was an RSS. All of this is dynasty. But if the Prime Minister wants to put his money where his mouth is, why doesn't the Honorable Prime Minister, rather than giving the sound bites, make a declaration that in the NDA alliance, he will not do tie-up with any dynasts or parties that are dynasties, be it BRS, which they're not in an alliance right now, but later on, Akali Dal, the Shiv Sena or NCP, as was rightly put by Ghulam. What did they do about NCP? Because Ghulam mentioned NCP. They broke the NCP. But who did they take? Dynast Ajit Pawar. Today in Maharashtra, Eknath Shinde ji is the Chief Minister. His son is a Member of Parliament. Dynast. Is it that they're breaking these dynast parties and not going ahead with dynasts? No, they're breaking the dynast parties, but going ahead with dynasties itself, whether it's Eknath Shinde ji, whether it's Ajit Pawar ji, any of these people. Chirag Paswan, whose visuals I saw earlier on, who is he? They threw his father's furniture out after his father passed away. They've gone and met up with Chirag Paswanji and they invited him. So the BJP is a hypocritical party, at least in other parties. And I'll tell you why I respect Omar Abdullah Wala. I disagree with his politics. At least he has the guts to call a spade a spade. He says, look, we are a dynasty, we agree to it. What does the BJP do? The BJP goes against dynasty while promoting dynasty. And that is where the problem is. The Honorable Prime Minister himself continues to shoot with one hand and hunt with the hound and run with the hare. It doesn't work like that. You have to stand by what you say. So if he's against dynasty, let him act on it. I challenge him to act on it. 2024, 2029, I challenge him. He won't act on it.
Well, all right. But even as we, move forward with this particular discussion, Tehseen, at the same time, and in the same coin, all right. Let's just understand and put it out there that all parties, cater to some sort of dynastic privilege, like you've pointed out as well. And Ghulam also in the documentary says that it's across party lines. It's not like, the BJP doesn't have any dynastic politics going on in its own, party fold. But talking about family-run parties justifying the mandate and the will of the people, does there come a challenge over there? Family-run parties justifying the mandate of the people inside the parliament, policy making, how does that get affected, Tehseen?
It does get affected to the point that on two levels. Number one, if you're a family party in policy making, your limited scope would be your first interest could be in terms of protecting your family. So, for example, let me give a larger example. Forget the parliament for a minute. Let me say BCCI, right? So, Amit Shah ji's interest was protecting Jai Shah. Jai Shah's interest will be protecting his seat. Same would be with Ashok Chavan and his son, Ashok Gehlot ji and his son in BCCI. So, there is an interest of protecting that legacy. So, you think that that seat is owned by you and it must go ahead. So, if you look at, for example, BCCI, it might be more about protecting Jai Shah's interest in cricket, could be. Similarly, if you take that further in Parliament, rather than making policies about what is beneficial to the nation, you could look at what benefits you electorally. So there are perils of dynasty in that sense. What is the advantage? Well, the advantage also could be, now this is an advantage, particularly in politics. If you've all your life, say, done politics, you've seen your father, your mother do politics, you've been on the ground, you know people, you know the constituency, all you want to do is, that's the only thing you know, and you're dedicated towards that. So there is certain amount of advantage, but I don't believe that the advantage overrides the disadvantage. It also, what happens in a democratic society, as Ghulam rightly put it, is it becomes a subservient culture. Baap ke, dada ke baad baap, baap ke baad beta, and the rest of the electorate is subservient to a particular family. For example, let's look at the Scindias. Now, the Scindias are everywhere. They've always been in politics. They continue to rule. So there becomes a feudal relationship where there's a hierarchy built up. In a democracy, you must not have a hierarchy. You must respect somebody on the post because he or she occupies a post, but it should not be hierarchy that the post or the seat is available to him just because, or to her just because they are the son or daughter of somebody. I think that creates a divide in society.
So in the long run, do you think this family-run privilege culture is going to hurt the democratic principles of our country? And if so, how does one, break this particular, bash through these dynastic cultural walls? How does one possibly attempt something like that?
Of course, it will affect. It will affect because dynasties will always get together, irrespective of political parties, to protect their interests. So of course, it will affect. If you see, for example, again, because we were mentioning the Maharashtra Assembly, and that's what Ghulam did. The Maharashtra Assembly is a cozy club of people who are all dynasts, one after another, and they continue to occupy that place. That is now extending to the Union Cabinet in the current Honorable Prime Minister's Cabinet. It's a cozy club. You look at Parliament, it's a cozy club. So all of them become a cozy club, and then there is a relationship. When you're a cozy club, criticism becomes less. You tend to be authoritarian. You tend to sort of view dissent with disdain. You tend to want to rule. You believe you have a divine right to rule, like the czars do. So there is a systematic problem in a democracy. The democracy must be for meritocracy, not exactly for dynasty. Having said that, just because you're a dynasty, you should not be disqualified from contesting. Ultimate power should remain in the hands of the people. Therefore, I always tell people, and it's a statement I keep using a lot. The first three words of our constitution is we the people. Not I the Prime Minister, I the opposition leader, I the Chief Justice, I the President. We the people. Not even I God. It is, or I believe in God. It is we the people. This constitution has made us, the people of India, absolutely supreme. The first three words are us. The power must always rest in the hands of we the people, and we the people must always have the power to change who we want, to put people. They must learn that they are here to serve us, we the people. They are not our bosses. They don't have a divine right to rule. So, for example, we the people must ask Amit Shahji, why is Jay Shah in the BCSC? I again ask this. One is political. Why is Jay Shah there? What is his contribution to Indian cricket? There's no answer. And that will continue to bother. There's also one small disadvantage, I'll tell you. Chief ministers, MPs, parliamentarians, their children will always get the best of education and healthcare. Always. So what will happen? The divide in society will grow. So unless you're not privileged, then the politicians' kids will get best of healthcare and education. Other kids won't get the same. Why should that divide exist in a democratic society? So Shivraj Singh Chauhan's kids will always go to the best universities in the world, learn English. Very important. They will learn English. But here, they will encourage you to take to violence. They will encourage you to take to streets. They will encourage you to take to mobs. Their kids will not be involved. Same with OAC's kids. They will go to the best of universities, learn English. But here they will not ask you to come on the street and protect religion. So this divide will continue to exist. Kids of politicians enjoy tremendous benefits in our country, which is fundamentally, in my opinion, against Article 14, the right of equality. Why should that be? In a country governed by rule of law, rule of constitution, and governed by the idea of equality. What did Pandit Nehru say in Tryst with Destiny? He says the aim of India's independence is to wipe every tear from every eye and to create opportunities. How is opportunity being created for a poor kid who does not get the same opportunity as Shivraj Singh Chauhan's kids or Himanta Biswa Sharma's kids or OAC's kids? Why? That's not equal, right? Why should that kid be malnourished? Why should that kid not learn English? Why should that kid not get the same opportunity? Why should that kid be encouraged to go on the street and pick up weapons where Shivraj Singh Chauhan, OAC, or even someone in the Congress, their kids are abroad, or Jay Shah is in BCCI? It is against the right to equality, in my opinion.
All right. Ghulam, I know that you met with Chirag Paswan yourself. You interviewed the man. And I read your article as well. It says that, he has no problem being called this Nepo kid. And why I'm asking this question is because, somewhere deep down, in my limited opinion, I thought that there was a little air of arrogance over there as well. And rightly so. Ramvilas Paswan, the man that he was, the weatherman of Indian politics. Would you like to echo on what Tehseen here is talking about? And even as we're trying to, replace, swap, substitute this culture, how does one go about, breaking this phenomenon? Like you pointed out, there's a lot of money involved over here as well. And so many of the people who can't even, fathom replacing somebody like, a political, it could be anything. And in Bihar, you have a few. Your viewpoint on that?
Okay, so you mentioned Chirag Paswan. While Chirag Paswan is clearly saying that he doesn't have a problem being a Nepo kid. In fact, he's saying that he faces problems because he has this performance pressure from the peers, that he is being compared to his father. He says in Hindi in our documentary that some people say that his father, Ramvilas Paswan, was more, welcoming. He would welcome people, and Chirag is arrogant. But again, at the same time, he is also battling an internal family crisis. When Ramvilas Paswan passed away in 2020, few days later, his brother and Chirag's uncle, he parted ways from the party, and he said that I have been appointed as the chairman of the Lok Janshakti party. The fact of the matter is that dynasty, as Tehseen was rightly pointing out, it deprives people opportunities. What are these people? Tehseen was talking about the people, common people. But my point here is that it even deprives opportunities to the people within the party. Why would Chirag become the president of the party if his father passes away? Why can't any other person who is not related to the Paswans? This is the criticism that comes out, that it deprives people of opportunity. But if you talk of with these Nepo kids or these dynasts like Chirag, I also spoke with Dushyant Chautala. Dushyant Chautala speaks about the fact that when a lawyer's son can become a lawyer, a doctor's son can become a doctor. Why can't a businessman's son can become a businessman? Why can't a politician's son become a politician? Again, the fact is that look at Dushyant. Dushyant was one of the youngest members of parliament. He was 25 when he was elected to the parliament. Now he is the deputy chief minister of Haryana. So his point I'm talking about the perspective of the Dynasties. They are saying that we are elected, we represent people. But then my point is, the larger point is, why can't a different person who is not from the Chautala family being given the ticket in the elections? Why only Dushyant Chautala? He is the fifth generation politician. And as far as the recourse to this problem is concerned, we have mentioned in our documentary, Aam Aadmi Party, which is a new party, obviously, is the only political startup that has come up in India in last 10 years. It started in 2012 and 2023 it had become a national party. Arvind Kejriwal's party has not come up with any Dynasties for that matter. And in fact, if I remember correctly, the party in its rules have mentioned that they won't give tickets to any Dynasties. I think that is the right approach. Each party should bring in its rules, in its constitution, that they won't give tickets for election to any of the candidate who has a history, whose family member is in the party, or for that matter, why can Arvind Kejriwal's son only become the politician? The rule should be that if Arvind Kejriwal is an elected MLA or chief minister, his son cannot be given the ticket in the party. We have examples of CPM, which we have mentioned. Mostly CPM, the communists have not followed this Dynasty culture. But these are two exceptions, and exceptions are not rules. But if you look at the larger political landscape of India, every nook and corner, I have mentioned in the story 34 political families, from Kashmiri, from Abdullahs of Kashmir to Karunanidhis of South, Sangmas in the Northeast, we have Scindias, we have Nehru Gandhi, obviously. So it is everywhere. It's not just in the parliament, it's in the assembly also. Look at Yadavs of UP. They were once the longest Dynasty families. 20 members of the family were in one position.
The Sorens, the Chaudhurys, I mean, the list goes on. I get your point, Gulam.
One more point, it's not just giving tickets to the family, people who have connections in the family. It's also about, right, Prime Minister Modi is mentioning that all the positions in the party, these important positions in the party are giving to the families. So this is also problematic.
Well, absolutely. Very quickly, Tehseen, we're running out of time here, but I do want to give you the last say over here. First and foremost, is that Aam Aadmi Party example justified? And secondly, how do you see the future trajectory of our country, dynasty politics in India, and potential shifts that might change the atmosphere and the workings of the parliament? But first and foremost, that Aam Aadmi Party example and the future trajectory. But very quickly, we're running out of time here.
So the Aam Aadmi Party, while yes, it said it won't go ahead with dynastic policies, I'm not sure if that's a part of their constitution, but because they also said that they won't, the same leader won't continue to won't continue to lead the party time and again, and now they've amended that, and now Arvind Kejriwal unquestionably continues to head the Aam Aadmi Party. Also, if you remember, Gulam is right on the Aam Aadmi Party currently having no dynasty, but it started as a startup with a dynasty, Prashant Bhushan and Shanti Bhushan. They were also the highest funders for the Aam Aadmi Party until Arvind Kejriwal ji had a fallout with Prashant Bhushan and rightly kicked Prashant Bhushan out, who I think is a liability in any case. But for a larger issue that I want to make, don't believe that the Aam Aadmi Party will not change. It's changed a lot of things, so it can change this. What should you do to ensure dynasty doesn't happen? Well, there's nothing much you can do legally. Gulam's suggestion is right. You can make a point that you don't give somebody a ticket, but that can only be a point. That can't be legally enforced, because even that kid has a right to his or her right to contest an election. But what we the people should do is ensure that dynasts who come in are coming on merit, not because they are some. But like, why should Chirag Paswan head his father's party? He's certainly not the most competent politician in the country, or even in his party, or even in Bihar. So you must question. So ultimately, the power must always rest with we the people. One last thing. Once again, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Gulam. This is stellar work that he's doing, and our democracy requires work and fearless journalism and documentaries like what he's doing. So many kudos to Gulam.
Absolutely. Congratulations to you, Gulam, and Tehseen, you as well. Both of you gentlemen, many thanks for joining with us and helping us out with your insightful inputs. We'll sure to be catching up soon. So, the Dynasties of 2024 polls, why do they matter? And what's going to be the significance ahead of 2024 polls? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. One thing that has come out is that it's across the country. And there's nothing wrong in being a politician if your father's a politician or your mother's a politician, but merit always over privilege. That's the bottom line over here. That's all the time we have for you. We're going to leave you with the entire documentary chunk. Do download the News9 Plus application if you like it.
ये जो विरासत और वारसा बारिश के रूप में चल रहा है, डायनेस्टी के रूप में चल रहा है, कोई डायनेमिक्स है ही नहीं। एक परिवार के लोग ही उस पार्टी के अध्यक्ष बने, उस पार्टी का पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड बने। अब देखिए हिंदुस्तान की बर्बादी कहां से हो रही है। जम्मू कश्मीर से शुरू करिए, पंजाब में देखिए, आप हरियाणा में देखिए, उत्तर प्रदेश देखिए, झारखंड देखिए, आप तमिलनाडु में जाइए, ये परिवार ही पार्टी चलाता है। ये लोकतंत्र के लिए बहुत से बड़ा खतरा है।
I don't see why you people have a problem with a lineage. And why just in politics?
As Nepo kids, we really don't get that much of an opportunity to prove ourselves.
Can a lawyer's son be a good lawyer? Yes. I consider it an affront to democracy.
In one statement, Mr. Modi is able to kill two birds, two of his opponents at the national level and at the state level.
Politics in India is often viewed as a privileged family heirloom, handed down to sons, daughters, spouses, and nephews. While the Nehru-Gandhi family often dominates the discourse about dynasty, the culture of nepotism prevails across political parties and regions. From the Abdullahs of Kashmir to the Karunanidhis of Tamil Nadu, the Scindias and the Yadavs in the Hindi heartland, to the Sangmas in the northeast, India has about 34 powerful political families.
Dynasties have been important in Indian politics, and they've been particularly important because there are two types of dynasties. One have been political dynasties, like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, his father Motilal Nehru ji was in Congress politics, then he came in, and then his daughter becomes Prime Minister, and Indira Gandhi's son Rajiv Gandhi becomes Prime Minister. The question mark comes after the death or the murder and killing of Rajiv Gandhi, when Sonia Gandhi is not able to take it over directly, but she stays the power behind the throne, and then Rahul Gandhi has not been able to take the mantle of the Congress party, but he remains their most important leader, and there's Priyanka Gandhi also coming.
I consider it an affront to democracy. We are the world's largest democracy. The perpetuation of political dynasties, not on merit but on the accident of birth, is fundamentally antithetical to democracy. Let's be clear. And it also spawns, nurtures an atmosphere of unacceptable psychophancy. It stifles inner party democracy.
What would be the credibility of Mr. Omar Abdullah were he not the son of his father? And similarly for Farooq Abdullah, who was Dr. Farooq Abdullah, least interested in politics, I think nowhere near the stature of a Sheikh Abdullah, who was a genuine people's leader and a peasant leader, and built the political capital.
I don't see why you people have a problem with a lineage, and why just in politics. Why don't you have a problem with lineage when it's in other fields? Why don't you have a problem with lineage when it's in business? You don't seem to have a problem when the big industrial families of this country hand over their businesses worth hundreds and thousands of crores to their children. You don't seem to have any problem with that. Film stars, singers, actors, actresses, again, you don't have a problem. But you have a problem with politicians, particularly with politicians who subject themselves to the will of the people.
Mr. Akhilesh Yadav is a dynast. Mr. Stalin is a dynast. Mr. Dhumal's son is a dynast. So, even Abhishek Bachchan is a dynast. I mean, that's how India runs.
Over the years, some of the prominent dynasts of the Congress party and other regional parties have bitten the dust. For instance, Rahul Gandhi in Amethi, the erstwhile Congress stronghold, and Yadavs in Uttar Pradesh. The recent crisis triggered by Eknath Shinde in the Shiv Sena and Ajit Pawar in the NCP has dealt a body blow to the two political dynasties from Maharashtra, the Thakres and the Pawars. Yet, a record 1/3 of parliamentarians in the existing Lok Sabha are dynasts. It was 20% in 2004, while 44% of the Congress MPs are dynasts. The BJP is not far behind, with 25% of its Lok Sabha MPs being dynasts.
Sometimes there may be internal battles within a family itself. In Akhilesh Yadav's family, almost, the uncle Ram Gopal Yadav has been fighting elections. Shivpal Yadav is now in another camp. His wife Dimple Yadav ji fought the elections. At the local level, Dharmendra ji is also active in politics. So many families have it like this. The battle is not to be chief minister and definitely not the prime minister, but the local assembly level, the hereditary inheritance of assembly level loyalties are placed within families.
The dynasts have thrived in India, perhaps because politics involves spending a lot of money. Barring the Aam Aadmi Party, one cannot name any political startup that has emerged in the last 10 years.
As per a study that I had done for Patrick French's book called India, and there he had concluded that about 25 to 30% of elected representatives from civic polls to parliament were second or third generation dynasts. Maybe it's because of the centuries of a kind of monarchical rule, etc., and then followed by the British rule. We are temperamentally have this kind of my baap culture. We give a lot of importance to a particular person or personality.
Amount of money that is involved now in elections and campaigns and so on. When they go out campaigning, they always have a family member accompanying them. Maybe because they have to handle, the financial part of it, arranging the rallies, arranging the funding, arranging the cars, arranging, so many logistical arrangements. I think that's how it has evolved as a family business. And, virtually every party today, if you look at them, all of them are family-run parties.
As Nepo kids, we really don't get that much of an opportunity to prove ourselves. We are generally believed they are the ones born with silver spoon, golden spoon, diamond studded spoon, whatever spoon that they want to call. So we often don't get an opportunity to prove ourselves.
Can a lawyer's son be a good lawyer? Yes. It's his capability. Can a doctor's son be a good doctor? Yes. Can a press reporter's son be a good reporter? Yes. There have been multiple cases in diverse fields where people have done well, and I think in politics also it's not an easy task. If you are there, if you are helping people, people's sentiments are with you, I think people elect you back. If not, we have seen dynasties just wiping away.
We have to fight for our existence in front of our own family members, Chirag Paswan will not be compared to any other leader from my state or any other politician. I'll be directly and only compared to my father only. And they'll put me down in reference to my father only. So these are these saying, "Arey, Paswan ji to bahut अच्छे थे, but Chirag वैसा नहीं है. Paswan ji to बहुत मिलनसार थे. Chirag, he's little arrogant. Paswan ji के तो घर के दरवाजे सबके लिए खुले रहते थे, but Chirag, no, he's very reluctant." So they'll use your father's name only to put you down.
BJP, it's always been there. Remember this. Mr. Modi made a criticism of this, but I would say Rajmata Vijaya Raje was always there, And I have found that most important political leaders, Vajpayee ji of course did not have a family, Mr. Narendra Modi does not have a family, but a lot of the important political leaders have their sons in politics. And so it's something that cannot be denied that, Mr. Anurag Singh Thakur is an example of his father being in politics and he being in politics.
So although right at the top the BJP may not be a dynasty rule party, and I think that's largely because the BJP is guided and mentored and to some extent I think controlled by the RSS, which has prevented it from becoming a family run party. But certainly at the lower levels in Lok Sabha constituencies, in Vidhan Sabha constituencies, we see many BJP dynasty families. But even the BJP at state level, we've seen how many senior political leaders have their sons and daughters in politics, either as MPs or as MLAs. Rajnath Singh, for instance, his son is an MP. There's so many of them.
But the BJP does have quite a few leaders now who are carved from their own political trajectories, and they haven't had a history of a father or anybody else propelling them. Shivraj Singh Chauhan is a great example. Pushkar Singh Dhami in Uttarakhand is a great example. Mr. Yogi Adityanath is a great example. Narendra Modi ji, when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, then also becomes Prime Minister. His famous speech was, I remember having heard before the 2012 elections, where he said, "Mara bapa to sarpancho na tha." And I think it does hit at people when you tell them that, look, from an ordinary person I can become Chief Minister, from an ordinary person I can become this.
In many Western democracies, like the USA, there are examples of second generation politicians. For example, the Bush family and the Kennedy family, to name a few. But the third and fourth generation politicians is primarily an Asian phenomenon. Not just in India, countries like Japan, Bangladesh, Pakistan and Sri Lanka have many examples of political families. In the Philippines, more than 60% of the country's House of Representatives have been made of dynastic clans.
So dynasty is very integral. Unless we have electoral reforms, we cannot eradicate dynasty. The BJP is full of dynasty culture. It is willing to who is Ajit Pawar? What is Ajit Pawar's claim to fame? There is a whole political culture that Mr. Modi or no other political party has been able to break. I mean, Aam Aadmi Party is very new. We will see it, after 10 years when the, dynasty can come in.
I mean, in fact, I think the only party that is left which is not ruled by a dynasty, does not follow this, tradition of dynast families, is the CPM, which, I can't think of anybody whose child is in politics, amongst left parties.
आज भारत कह रहा है डायनेस्टी क्विट इंडिया, यानी परिवारवाद, इंडिया छोड़ो.
Modi ji is only questioning the political dynasty. And why he is doing this? Because you have to see that with one principle, he is able to attack two types of opponents. One is the Congress party, which has the strongest history of political lineage and political dynasty, and the others are regional parties. The regional parties are family parties. So in one statement, Mr. Modi is able to kill two birds, two of his opponents at the national level and at the state level, both together, and that's why we are talking about the issue, because Mr. Modi is raising this against both.
For now, the culture of political dynasty doesn't seem to be going away despite PM Modi attacking them. Most of these politicians are powerful and will matter in 2024 elections as well, especially with the kind of alliances that have come up in recent times.
This is Gurugram, a fast-growing satellite city of the national capital. High-rises dot its affluent neighborhoods. It is the darling of real estate giants in northern India. Gurugram is like every other swanky Indian city, embracing development at lightning speed. But such development always comes with a hefty price.
Something like Hanuman, going away with the hill. This is what was happening.
It is going to be disastrous for Northwest India in terms of our water security, in terms of the climate change that is happening, in terms of our groundwater, in terms of pollution.
Aravali's have two major kind of threats. One is real estate and the other is mining.
The Aravalis. From Wazirabad in Delhi to Palanpur in Gujarat, the Aravalis stretch across 692 kilometers. They are estimated to be more than 1 billion years old. They act as a natural barrier and shield more than 4.6 crore people in Delhi NCR from the elements. But the Aravalis are bleeding.
इस वक्त हम हरियाणा के अरावली पहाड़ी इलाके में खड़े हैं और ये वो क्राइम सीन है जहां पर आज नूह जिले के एक डिप्टी एसपी की खनन माफियाओं ने डंपर से कुचलकर हत्या कर दी है।
We arrested 12 persons who were linked with this case, associated in different kind of activities.
The mining mafia is brazen. Even policemen are not safe. Within weeks of DSP Surinder Singh's murder, the mafia struck again. 50 men attacked cops who were conducting a raid on illegal mining operations. In the last decade, at least 50 police and government officials have been attacked.
We were on a routine checking, night checking. So we stopped them, we checked them, we found them that they are heavily overloaded and an action needed to be taken against them. So while we were checking them, one of the driver tried to fled away from the spot. And while he was doing so, he hit my official vehicle and we escaped a serious accident.
Nuh, Panchgaon and Mewat, along with Haryana-Rajasthan border, are hubs of illegal mining. 239 FIRs related to illegal mining have been registered in Haryana itself in the last 2 years. We travel to Panchgaon, the heart of the illegal mining operations. Every single house in its dusty streets stands on a 3-meter plinth made of quartz stone, illegally mined from the Aravalis. As we move from the foothills towards the ranges, we notice giant craters that have replaced hillocks. These depressions are now filled with water. What's driving such unabated mining in the area?
हर दिन नहीं होता, जब जरूरत होती है जी, कोई रोज तो घर बना नहीं पाता, तो महीने में 6 महीने में जब भी जरूरत होती है 1-2 गाड़ी भर के ले जाते हैं और थोड़ी बहुत जरूरत होती है तो थोड़ा बहुत बेच भी देते हैं, 1000-2000 इसको, जिसके पास कुछ साधन नहीं है उसको ले जाके दे भी देते हैं.
That may just be the partial truth. The mining mafia runs like a well-oiled machine. We did some digging of our own.
और कहाँ से आती है?
ये इस भरतपुर से आती है.
ओके, जहाँ पे अरावलीज है?
हाँ, अरावलीज.
ये कैसे होता है वहाँ?
रात में जैसे माइनिंग करते हैं, तो बोल्डर निकाल लेते हैं, उसमें दिन में वो भर देते हैं, मिट्टी को भर देते हैं. मिट्टी भरने के बाद में समतल हो गया, किसी को नहीं पता यहाँ क्या हुआ है, ठीक है जी, और ट्रकों में लोड करके भेज देते हैं.
It is the bureaucrat who guide or misguide the politician to telling them that how these laws can be violated without attracting punishment. Because they will write such word, use such word, language or ignore in such a way that there is no penalty.
Illegal mining has left 12 gaps in the Aravalli. These gaps channel sand towards the capital. The process is called desertification. In 2017, the Wildlife Institute of India detected sand dunes in Harchandpur village, 20 kilometers from Gurugram. The village is 60 kilometers from Delhi. If the plunder of the Aravallis continues, the Thar Desert could move closer to the national capital. A 2018 report by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India said 25% of the Aravallis were illegally mined between 2011 and 2017. This has led to a spike in bronchitis and asthma in Rajasthan. More than 4,000 people have been affected by an incurable lung disease called silicosis. 449 people have died. In 2018, the Supreme Court was hearing a case on illegal mining. Justice Madan Lokur was startled with what he heard.
Hillocks have completely disappeared from the face of the earth because of this illegal mining, which is shocking. And the state of Rajasthan filed a response to the report, and they did not deny.
Why do you think there had been no real impact on the ground?
Unless the government realizes, unless the executive realizes, we are going to face this kind of a problem.
The Aravalli story is more than just greed. It's also a failure of urban planning. The National Capital Regional Planning Boards build sustainable plans for the NCR and 25 districts of Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan. The board has a draft plan which will serve as a roadmap for the next 2 decades till 2041. If approved, it will sound a death knell for the Aravallis.
If you look at the deletions, the word Aravalli has gone, the word forest has gone, water bodies have been circumscribed by saying only by natural origin. I would say 95% of the water bodies in the NCR are perhaps, they have an element of human intervention. So there's a huge shrinkage of what will be NCZ. All the policies have been deleted.
NCRPB authorities did not respond to News9 Plus's request for comment. In 2018, the Supreme Court and the National Green Tribunal ordered the demolition of illegal farmhouses in Faridabad and Gurugram. But illegal construction continues. In Haryana's Harchandpur village, rampant illegal construction has led to depletion of groundwater levels.
जमीन हमारी बिक रही है, उनमें फ्लैट बन रहे, टावर बन रहे। ये पेड़ हमारे कटने से हमें जो जल स्तर बारिश नहीं होने से हमारा जो जल स्तर है वो डाउन होते जा रहा।
Environmentalists are engaged in a battle to save the Aravallis from the excesses of urbanization and illegal mining.
Reminding the government of their duty of protecting our forest, and we have to do every bit of ours. We have to put in every might of ours to put pressure on the government.
And their efforts are beginning to make the judiciary and the government wake up and take notice. The National Green Tribunal pulled up the Haryana and Union government over their failure to prevent illegal mining in the Aravallis.
Our demand is to actually look at the Aravallis as one living ecosystem and declare entire Aravallis as a permanent biosphere reserve.
It's been 14 years since the Apex Court completely banned mining in the Aravallis. But land use laws are being tweaked to prioritize urbanization over environment. The mafia continues to pillage the mountains. How many years will it take for our policymakers to realize this? The plundering of the Aravalis is a clear and present danger to our lungs and our lives.
ChatGPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses through text, write stories, and do a lot more.
I work in a newsroom with anchors, researchers and scriptwriters, graphic artists, producers, video editors, camera crew. But does a newsroom really need them today?
All of us have to think about unique and distinctive value addition that cannot be automated or repeated or replaced by a machine.
ChatGPT may kill many companies. A human has to be in the loop with an ability to control this.
Dark Side of the Boom. Streaming now.
On March 20, 2023, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warned member states they were not doing enough to limit global warming. Phase out coal by 2040, appealed United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
No new coal, and the phasing out of coal by 2030 in OECD countries and 2040 in all other countries.
Fossil fuels like coal, gas, and oil emit carbon dioxide. This stays in the atmosphere longer than other greenhouse gases like methane. The world used more than 8,000 million tons of coal in the year 2022. Its emission traps heat in the Earth's atmosphere and raises temperatures.
India has been consistently advocating that we move away completely from fossil fuels, not just identifying coal as one of the villains in this case. And this stand was, so to say, raised by India at the COP. But then the developed economies did not sign. Now, the good thing is that the UN also has, so to say, vindicated its India's stand by saying that this is the right approach to go.
India's installed power generation capacity is more than 4 lakh megawatt. This includes fossil and non-fossil fuels. Of this, almost half is coal. The remaining sources of energy include hydropower, lignite, gas, diesel, wind, solar, and nuclear.
We consumed about 697 million tons in the power sector. I'm not talking about coal for all the other sectors, which was over 1,000 million tons last year. Up to 2030 will be, the power sector will consume about 990 million tons or so.
India should actually, not only sustain its coal production, but grow it. And I'm happy to tell you that India is exactly doing that. It is growing its production and it has set some ambitious targets. And what is interesting is that now there is a plan to actually export coal by 2026. So that's extremely on track when it comes to looking at the coal policy in this country.
India's energy demand is going to quadruple over the next 20 years. And it cannot rely on a variable source of generation like REs.
You have sun, which shines only for a few hours in the day. Similarly, wind blows only at certain times of the year and certain time of the day. We do have some amount of hydro, but it cannot take. Hydro also has its limitations in terms of environmental issues. So we have to depend on coal.
Hello and welcome. You are watching Business Plus here on News 9 Live. I'm Krishna Kumar and we're being joined in the studios by Karthik Malhotra and Suyash Maheshwari. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Karthik, exciting day for the stock market. Suyash, I'm sure you're trembling with excitement. Tell us how it went down, because all eyes were on the all-important Jio Financial Services listing, JioFin to be precise. That's the name of the stock upon listing. But before we get to that, I think, Suyash, we should talk about the markets. Something good, something positive with the markets after 2 days of losing.
Definitely, and we have to also understand that the market was on a 4-week losing streak, right? So Indian markets managed to snap that current two-day losing streak and ended with modest gains in today's session. Now Sensex was up about 0.41% at 65,216 levels, whereas Nifty 50 rose about 0.43%, marginally below the 19,400 levels. Mid Cap 100 and the Small Cap 100 index also managed to outperform the headliners in today's session, and the Nifty Mid Cap 100 index was up about 0.82% at 38,126 levels, while the Small Cap index was up 0.63% at 11,756 levels.
All right, so that's how the broader markets were. Before we get into JioFin again, let's talk about the biggest stocks that were in action for the day as well, so that we understand what exactly was moving the markets really for this trading session.
Definitely. So most of the sectors ended in the positive territory today, apart from Nifty PSU banks, which saw some profit taking after a couple of weeks of rally. Nifty Media was also under pressure at about 0.29%. But now Nifty IT and Nifty metals were among the gainers. They logged gains of over 1%. Nifty IT was up 1.09% and Nifty metal surged 1.3% in today's session. Now, if we look at the gainers and losers today, among the gainers on Nifty were Bajaj Finance. Bajaj Finance gained about 2.75% in today's session after Jefferies reiterated its bullish stance on the stock. Jefferies has a buy target of about 3,830 rupees on the stock, which gives an upside of about 25% from today's closing.
Right.
Power Grid Corporation was also in the news. It was up about 2.66%. Adani Ports and Adani Enterprises continue to do well. Actually, we have seen broad-based buying in all Adani stocks in the last 3 sessions. Adani Ports was the top gainer today. It gained about 2.59% after on August 17th, GQG picked up another 2.2 million stake in the company and raised its holding to 5.03%. Adani Enterprise also saw there was a rub-off effect on all Adani stocks. Enterprise was up about 2.31%. Other than that, Hindalco also gained about 2%. Now, among losers were Jio Financial Services, which was down 5%. We'll talk about it. I know. Reliance stock also saw some correction. It was down about 1%. Mahindra & Mahindra fell about 0.91% after the company decided to recall about 1 lakh XUV units on a potential wiring issue. Britannia also saw some profit booking and was down about 0.75%. Bajaj Auto also ended today's session 0.36% lower.
All right. Quite the story as far as Adani Ports and Adani Enterprises is concerned, isn't it, Karthik? Especially after Deloitte, their official auditor, exited the group by exiting Adani Ports and SEZ. Things were looking very grim. They were down to the same kind of lows that they witnessed when the Hindenburg research report first came out. And look at the turnaround that's happened.
So I think what's happening really, Krishna, is that GQG is trying to pick up the right valuation, right being quote unquote, with Adani, and not just Adani Ports. Last week we also saw Adani Power, GQG upping its stake and buying almost 7.7% of the 8.1% that the promoter family had shed. So GQG is looking at getting the right valuation right now, maybe in a run up to the end of the month SEBI hearing at Supreme Court, where the final disclosure of whatever SEBI has been able to investigate in the Adani Hindenburg saga comes to some sort of a fruition. So it looks like GQG is going long on Adani right now, despite Adani being in the eye of the short selling storm. But GQG seems to be going a little long on Adani right now, picking up whatever best value they are able to arrive at right now, and hoping that things turn positive and these bets pay off at the end of the month. But will that really happen? We really don't know, because the hearing was initially scheduled for the 14th of August. Another 2 week of hiatus there. hoping that by the 29th of August, we should have some sort of a closure on the Adani Hindenburg issue.
And even the stocks, they are trading at considerable discount to 24th January's closing price. Now, if we talk about the Hindenburg report, there were two major concerns raised by Hindenburg. First, that the company is over leveraged. Second, that the company is involved in malpractices, stock market manipulation. Now, as far as market manipulation concerns go, we'll hear about it from SEBI's report in a week's time or so. But as far as the concerns about leverage of the company being over leveraged, Adani Group in the past 6 months have worked to strike a balance between growth, deleveraging its books, and also maintaining a capex. Now, the company has prepaid some of its loans, refinanced a lot of its loans, raised so much like thousands of crores from marquee investors like GQG. So it seems like investors are taking some respite that at least leverage concerns right now have is not a big concern for the market because the company stands well capitalized.
I think the third issue was about MPC, the 25% minimum public shareholding, and I think SEBI is going to try to figure out that whatever public holding was there, how much of that was actually linked to the promoter family or friends and associates of the promoters, and that is where, if you remember, it had hit what was referred to as the opaque structures. So it was difficult for SEBI to go beyond those opaque structures to try and discover who's the last beneficiary of those stocks in Adani Group.
Right. I'm guessing, if before discussing Jio Financial Services and what happens to the Reliance stock, on the day of its listing, the only the market's, big, focus in the market this morning was, of course, Titan, because of the massive Carrot Lane acquisition. They've upped their stake to the point where now they've acquired all of Carrot Lane. Titan is the new owners of Carrot Lane. But Suyash, we both don't need to tell the audience the importance of a stock like Titan, the much storied stock of Titan. How do you rate what happened with the Titan stock in today's trading session?
So, basically what happened today was Titan acquired an additional 27% stake in Carrot Lane. Now, Titan currently has a shareholding of about 71. Before the acquisition of the share price agreement, it had a holding of about 71%. After the deal, its stake in the company will increase to about 98.28%. Now, brokerages have come out with its opinion on how to look at the deal, and most brokerages have reiterated their bullish stance on the stock. Now, Macquarie has an outperform rating on the stock with a target price of about 3,400 rupees. Now, the brokerage firm says that valuations are attractive. HSBC also has a buy rating on the stock with a target price of 3,580. JP Morgan is overweight on the stock with a target price of 3,260 rupees per share. Another one is CLSA, which assigned an outperform rating as well with a target price of 3,270, saying that Titan is now focusing on building Carrot Lane as an integral component of its jewelry business, which will bode well for the company and for Carrot Lane as well.
All right, quite the acquisition, the biggest of its kind in recent times. At this stage we have Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, Head Research, AUM Capital Market Private Limited, now joining us live on the broadcast. Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on Business Plus on News9 Live. Tell us first up your thoughts on the day's trading session. Markets snapping a losing streak with some big gainers for the day in the form of especially the Adani stocks.
Good afternoon.
All right, I think we're not able to get the audio of Mr. Rajesh Agarwal. We'll try to reconnect with him and get it back. Mr. Agarwal, we'll have to reconnect with you. But there you go. At closing bell on Monday, Nifty up 0.5%, almost in the green, and the Sensex and the Nifty mid cap and the Nifty small cap as well. That's how the markets rounded out the day's trade. We have Rajesh Agarwal reconnected, I believe. Rajesh, if we can hear you right, if you can unmute us, unmute for us, because we're trying to hear you. We can see you all clear.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now. Wonderful. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is, after it took support at 19,250 on Friday, that was a 200 days EMA, market is trying to gain strength, and once it crosses 19,420, I think it would be gaining further strength. But the problem is coming from Bank Nifty side, because what we have always felt that market is like a bicycle. having two wheels. One is Nifty and the other one is Bank Nifty. Unless one performs, I don't think the market is going to go ahead very far. But yes, stock-specific action would be there. There are some concerns regarding Chinese economy, IIP being disappointing, rupee touching 83.42 on Friday. These were some of the concerns, but I think going forward, all global investors will be looking ahead on Jackson Hole meeting on the speech of Mr. Powell. So anything positive from that side would be a big trigger, because we are lacking triggers on the domestic market as such, because all results have been over, RBI meeting is over, macro data is done with. So I think people are looking towards global cues to go ahead.
Okay. At this stage, how would you rate what's happening with the Adani stocks with all the millions and billions being pumped in by GQG? All right, I think we lost your audio again, Mr. Agarwal. We'll have to reconnect with you. If you can just unmute yourself, sir. Mr. Agarwal.
No, I think we seem to have...
Right, I think we seem to have lost a connection. Mr. Agarwal, if you can hear us, we're not able to hear you. If you can unmute yourself, it'll be great.
I can hear you.
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. What I was trying to say is Adani group stock has taken quite a beating from the January highs, and a lot of them are trading at a good valuation at this point of time. I would say the numbers have been good in some companies like Adani Power and all. They have announced capex around 2,000 crore in transmission, GQC, and taken stake on some of the companies, and some bottom fishing is going on. We are bullish on some of the companies like Adani Ports, Adani Enterprise, Adani Wilmar, even Ambuja Cement. These can be taken by investors who have a good risk appetite and can hold for a medium to long-term horizon.
All right. The only thing left to discuss as markets today, because all eyes this morning when trade open was on the Jio Financial Services listing. At the end of the day, Jio Financial Services, or JioFin as it's called in the stock exchanges, ended being one of the top losers for the day, down 5% in trade, along with the Reliance Industries stock tanking as well.
See, this was basically because some ETF or fund house would be selling in the near future, news of that. But what I feel is going forward, if somebody has a long-term view, it's one of the must-hold stock in one's long-term holding, because they have a huge database from telecom and retail, which at their disposal, which they are going to leverage. They are going to be the third largest financial service company. They might attract new investors going forward, as we have seen in the past in case of retail and Jio. They are holding 6.1% stake in Reliance Industries. Mr. Kamath, Mr. Hitesh Sethia, Mr. Chiranjit Singh Atra of SBI, all in the help. I think things are looking very bright. And not to forget, they have made tie-ups with Blackstone for launching an AMC. People are just looking forward to any clarity on the business model of the company. But for a longer term horizon, we think it's giving a good buying opportunity. If tomorrow again it goes down by 5%, it would be a buying opportunity for investors who are looking to hold for maybe 12 to 18 months.
Sir, as far as JFS is concerned, it seems that the listing has disappointed streets, because in the grey market, Jio Financial Services stock was trading with a premium of about ₹50 at about 300 rupees. So how did you see the listing today?
See, basically what happens in grey market is a lot of optimism is built up. We have seen in the past also many unlisted companies traded at a huge price, a huge valuation, and when the IPO came, it came at a discount. So comparing prices of unlisted market or a grey market to formal, but as I said earlier, I would like to reiterate that this is giving an opportunity to long-term investors to get hold of Jio Financial Service.
Sell-off in Jio Financial Services to continue at least till August 24, till the stock is dropped from the Nifty index, because ultimately passive funds will be selling the stock.
Right.
So a 5% lower circuit tomorrow and day after tomorrow, and then maybe we'll see the stock settling down.
I hope so. I hope so. But because
Any price
we are very
over there?
bullish on the long-term prospects. The short-term price movements can't be predicted as such, and more so because it's a newly listed company. It listed today only, so we do not have any price data with us.
I mean, as far as valuations are concerned, it is considered like at least cheaper than Bajaj Financials, which is trading at about 8 times of its book value, whereas at today's closing of about 1.58 lakh crore, Jio Financial Services is trading about 6 times its book value.
Of course, you said it right. It's trading at a discount to Bajaj Finance, but then Bajaj Finance has got a hold on its retail finance business, which is going up like anything. Yes, it would face some competition from Jio going forward, but we are still awaiting the business model to be announced. At this point of time, what we know is they are going to launch an AMC and they are holding stock of Reliance Industry. But the prospects being very good, more so because Mr. Kamath and, as I said, Mr. Kamath, Mr. Ishtet Sethi and all are on the helm. So we are very bullish on this.
Right. The only thing is that all the bullishness is there, but the question keeps going back. What exactly is Jio Financial Services? What does it offer? All of it right now is driven by the names and the sentiment that is associated with Jio Fin.
And if it is an AMC, how long before we see some action on that front? Because they would require a license from SEBI to initiate its offerings as an AMC as well.
And what we understand, it would take anywhere between a year to 2 years before a financial services product from the group hits the market, albeit with BlackRock.
Of course, and as I said, they have a huge database of Reliance Jio and retail with them. And what I believe is they are going to leverage the Kirana merchants to extend their loans and all. So that may be a great business to going ahead.
Right. We'll leave it at that. Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, Head Research, AUM Capital Market Private Limited. Thank you so much for taking time out to join us here on Business Plus on News9 Live and help us break down the day's trading session at the stock markets. And with that, we move away from Dalal Street to Market Street.
Yes, the street.
The bazaar,
the
literally.
Real bazaar.
Right. It's time for Thalinomics again because after tomatoes, now onions are on the onion prices, so to speak, are on the boil, Karthik, and the government has wasted no time. The moment there was a spike, the government has stepped in, taken a series of measures. But the fact of the matter is that one of those measures hasn't gone down well with the onion farmers in the country.
Absolutely, Krishna. So I think the government was very clear in trying to ensure that it's able to ebb the rising onion prices, which was selling at about 30 rupees a kg. The government, 35 rupees a kg. The government wanted to hem it down to 25 rupees a kg. As a result of that, what the government initiated was telling the farmers that there is going to be a 40% duty on export of onions. So not making it lucrative for farmers to sell their produce outside of the borders of India and making it totally non-lucrative for them to earn any revenue by way of exports and keeping all their produce only for the domestic market. Now, as a result of that, the farmers and the farmer producer organizations are up in arms against the government, stating very clearly that they are not going to auction their produce of onions in the open market. Now, I think all this is stemming out of desperation from the end of the government to try and tame inflation, food inflation particularly, which affects every citizen and in an election year, every voter. So it's at that juncture where good economics is being replaced by bad economics perhaps for good politics, but I think we need an economist to answer that even better.
Oh, we do need one economist, and we do have one. In fact, joining us live, Karthik, we have Mr. Karan Bhasin joining us live on the broadcast here. Karan, thank you so much. As always, a pleasure having you here on News9 Live on Business Plus. Talk to us from potatoes. Now the focus is on onions. Thankfully, onion prices haven't become 100, 120, 4 times, 5 times. It went up by 10 rupees, and there's been a strong intervention from the government side.
Right. So, the issue over here that we have is, at its very core, we have had a very different pattern of rainfall this year. And whenever you have, unseasonal rains and so on and so forth, onion prices too tend to kind of pick up in certain parts of the country. It happened, I think, 2 years back as well. So it's not surprising that onion prices are being pushed up because, of course, it's at the end of the day, it's all about demand and supply. What is particularly important to stress here is that had we, not gone back on the farm laws, had we not, reversed the changes to the Essential Commodities Act, etc., probably farmers could have benefited from the new laws, which would have restricted government's ability to intervene in markets, and would have also, enabled a more robust and efficient supply chain to come in which case both consumers and producers would have benefited. But the fact that we didn't allow that to happen means that essentially we have a situation where when prices go up, there would be political pressure that the government would face, given that most of the countries are net buyer of food products, and they will have to intervene in order to keep prices low. And that's essentially what they're doing, because the problem with food inflation is that when we talk about inflation, a key component of it is also expectations. And in India's case, if you look at the expectation survey, and I've done quite a bit of work on this over the last 2 years, hopefully some of it should be out in public domain soon. A lot of the food inflation feeds into expectations, and that kind of makes higher inflation expectations entrenched into the system. And once that happens, even RBI is kind of in a situation where it needs to tighten more and more, thereby increasing the cost of existing installments. EMIs would have to adjust, tenures will have to adjust, and so on and so forth. So that contracts household balance sheets. So I guess there's not much option or not much policy levers that are available with the government, since it is likely that onion prices would be volatile going forward. And I think the decisions that have been taken keeping it in mind that there is political pressure, and then there's also economic consequences of not doing enough at this moment to arrest prices from going up before expectations become well entrenched into the system.
Hi Karan, nice to connect with you after a very long time. I just wanted to pick your brains on on some issues that I've been trying to battle with in my head. Number one being that, of course, you mentioned farm laws, and farm laws for whatever reason did not go through, and there was enough and more protest against farm laws, which got the government to take a step back. But even in a bad monsoon, if government would have been perhaps the only buyer, even at a higher MSP, farmers would not have really been able to sell outside of what the government paid them, or the pressure of low supply in any case would have got the government also to shell out perhaps more money to procure those farm products. But anyway, let's keep farm laws aside for now. I want to understand tactically in the arsenal of the government or the decision makers, policy makers, what are the tools available to actually hem in inflation? RBI, I believe, cannot do much at this juncture, because by way of any further tightening, only the demand side could get hemmed in. But on the supply side, which is the crux of the problem on food inflation right now, which is headline inflation, the RBI has got practically very little influence on how to foster supply. And on the fiscal front, aren't these export restrictions and upping the duty on any export or vegetable practices going to in some way maybe help tame inflation at the cost of economic growth? We are also talking about our exports getting cut because of these government pressures.
Right. So, it's a very different and challenging global economic environment that we are in, because you're right. The RBI essentially has just interest rates as one of the policy levers that they have, and that is not going to be enough to tame food inflation. And a lot of this is because of unseasonal rain and, bad monsoon and so on and so forth. But at its core, essentially it's the government which will have to step in, because they still have more fiscal policy levers available with them. The challenge, though, is that if they were to use, say, a tool like MSP, for every 10 percentage point increase in MSP, of weighted average kind of basket of the agricultural produce in it, you end up having a 2.2 percentage point increase in CPI. So over there also, they're more and more constrained, because if you do increase MSP, you're expanding your fiscal, or you're relocating money from one area to another, and at the same time your interest cost is going to go up, because if inflation picks up, interest rates would go up, and that would further squeeze fiscal space available with the government.
So more than anything else, right now with the government, Karan, what is it that the government can practically do to tame inflation at this juncture without compromising on growth prospects?
Well, I mean, essentially, you want to keep prices in check, but at the same time, you also want to ensure that you have enough supplies to begin with. And the only way to do that would actually be to allow imports to begin with. And that would, of course, create downward pressure on prices. And you're right, growth would, at least export growth would suffer as a consequence of this. But the challenge really is that if you don't do that, the counterfactual would actually be much worse. So you're really in a situation where there's not much choice available than to restrict exports, and at the same time, hopefully at some point, open up imports of these particular commodities where you see variable pricing.
But Karan, wouldn't that run into a challenge of its own? Because the moment we go to the world asking them to export vegetables to us, they would counter us by saying that, hey, why don't you open your rice exports and your sugar exports back to the world? And that again becomes another challenge, because we want to keep on holding on to our reserves of rice and sugar, again to tame the same inflation. And then if you're forced to export them as a reciprocal of the rest of the world exporting vegetables to us, we run into the same catch-22 situation.
Right, but there's a difference here. When India did restrict our exports, it was done not just with the objective of price stabilization domestically, but also with the objective of using it as a strategic or a geostrategic policy lever, because we are still giving rice shipments and sugar shipments to countries, but we're doing it through our diplomatic route and through government to government kind of agreements rather than allowing market forces to operate. And I think the objective there is more geopolitical in nature rather than economic. At least my sense is that it has been done given a lot of developments that are happening in BRICS and so on and so forth. So those are the objectives with which those restrictions have come in. I do feel that the supply constraint is not going to be as severe as people are worried about, but it is still important to be worried about and be ahead of the curve, because otherwise you end up in a situation where, as you did with tomato prices, which went up substantially, and now they're gradually coming back to a more reasonable level. They're still not back to where they should be, but at least they're coming back to a reasonable level. And I suspect something similar could have happened even with onion in the absence of proactive interventions to begin with. Now, I, for one, believe that you don't need any of these interventions, because essentially you are interfering in the market mechanism of price discovery. But unfortunately, the way we are at the moment, there's not much choice available. And
do you think the leadership in the country would have agreed with you on this point, Karan, had it not been a run-up to the elections? Do you think the government would have not made these interventions had it not been elections next year?
Well, I don't know if they would have still made. I strongly suspect that the political economy of India is such that even if there weren't general elections next year, these decisions would be taken. And I suspect that's probably because you do have state elections happening every year and every 6 months. Yeah. So we are a country which is perennially in an election cycle, like it or not.
So as an economist, Karan, as an economist, what is your one line advice to the government? Wait and watch, let the Rabi growing season come in, let El Nino fears subside, or let El Nino hit and go back, and do nothing right now? Is that the best way to let market dynamics play out? Or is there some real fiscal stroke monetary intervention that the country should do at this stage?
Well, I mean, they do have the price stabilization fund which is available with them. And I would have first preferred to use that rather than banning exports to begin with. That would have been the first policy lever that I would have. But I strongly suspect that the efficiency of that fund has been really poor, and they haven't been able to figure out how to best utilize it. If it were up to me, I would have advised not to get panicky and kind of bring in these restrictions at this point. But then again, at the end of the day, I don't have to deal with monetary fiscal coordination or the political economy of India. So as I said, that a lot of these choices are made keeping in mind not just economics, but also the political economy and the reality of India, where inflation itself plays a significant role in shaping up of expectations, food inflation in particular. So if the objective is to end the monetary tightening cycle soon and alleviate more fiscal space, say within the next 6 to 8 months or 1.5 years, if that is the objective, then I think it makes complete sense to kind of arrest onion prices to go up, because onion prices, when they go up, they have a disproportionate effect on inflation expectations. And as we know that the MPC and the RBI do look at inflation expectation, which feeds into their forecasting models as well. So,
all right. Talking about inflation, I just wanted to ask, how right do you think is the Prime Minister in saying that, inflation is essentially an imported phenomenon given, the global supply chain disruptions as a whole?
Well, I mean, across the world, it has been an imported phenomena. And the question really is that if it is an imported phenomena, then who is the country which actually exported it? And the answer to that question is something that we all know, and right now what looks very likely is that rather than importing inflation going forward further, China might end up exporting deflation. And that's a real concern with which, people have to be vigilant about dumping activities that might happen as their economy slows down. But I do think that my views on inflation cycle has changed a bit, because I expect a lot more of supply chains shifting, which seems to be happening underway. And that process and that disruption itself will be a process in which, price adjustment would take a bit longer. And what that really means is that for the next couple of years, we might not go back to the persistently low inflation regime that we have experienced in the last 30 years globally, and in India probably the last 8 years or so.
Specifically, food inflation is what we are grappling with. See, I understand it's easy to blame Russia or to blame the world when it comes to rising crude prices or overall supply chain constraints. But here in India, what is really biting us is food inflation, and this food inflation coming out of a bad monsoon and the overall disruption in the domestic supply chain. Is it really fair to say that this inflation mess is actually a function of global import?
No, so if you're talking about just food inflation, that is different than inflation overall, because food inflation, as you would know, at least during the first 2 years of the pandemic, was still muted in India. There were occasionally some spikes that happened, and those spikes happened because of mismanagement of supply chain domestically. But a key component is also fuel prices, because it feeds into transportation. And if you look at domestic fuel prices, there is still scope there. I mean, I think 6 months back there was more space available with the government to bring them down. I think now that space has shrunk a bit, but there is still space available with the government should it want to kind of bring down some of these logistics costs that might indirectly feed into vegetable prices. So there are all sorts of choices that are on the table essentially, but we must accept that the reason why food, fruits and vegetable prices or pulses prices have gone up in India have to do with the bad monsoon that we have experienced. And we also should come to terms with the reality that such kind of weather shocks, adverse weather shocks might become more and more prominent going further, as we have been witnessing over the last couple of years throughout the world. And that's essentially the reason why there's so much talk on moving towards a more sustainable agricultural policy to begin with. So I don't know what more can be done, because irrigation is an area where, of course, a lot can be done, but even that would not alleviate these pressures.
Agriculture is what Karan is talking about. We've got to make our agriculture monsoon-proof. We've got to make it sustainable, and we've got to try and make sure that going forward, we are not faced with a situation which is completely out of our control, even though it is monsoon-related.
Like the one we do face at this point in time. So, but Karan, thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us here on Business Plus here on News9. Lovely having you back. Hope to keep having you again and again in the future as well. But for now, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for being with us. And with that, Karthik, it's time to continue our journey here on the show. Inflation, can the government bite the bullet is what we call it. But corporate India is biting the bullet as far as disruptions are concerned to what is happening to India and to what is happening to businesses. Businesses getting disrupted because of newer and newer technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning emerging as the mainstay. They were emerging 10 years ago, but right now artificial intelligence is fast becoming the mainstay of new technology adoption across companies. And to deal with that, you have India Inc. willing to induct younger and younger board members as part of their boards. 30-somethings, Karthik, are becoming board members, independent board members, giving the suggestions in companies of all kinds, not just the tech sector or something. It's all kinds of companies willing to take on young board members in a country where the major share of the workforce are millennials like you and me.
So, Krishna, I think biting the bullet is where we started from. Thankfully, the folks who are biting the bullet, the youngsters who are biting the bullets are not just frontline workers anymore. They're pretty much the strategic leaders trying to draw up the vision for companies sitting in the boardrooms. It just gives me hope that it's perhaps not too early for people like you and me also to occupy those seats.
Absolutely.
So there is definitely some hope. Yeah, late 30s, early 40s seems like just the right time to be an independent board member somewhere. I hope we have Monica with us who can help us find a company that wants to induct more younger independent board members.
We are being joined by Monica Agrawal, Managing Director, Financial Services Asia Pacific, Corn Ferry. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on Business Plus on News9 Live. Monica, talk to us. This trend is an extremely heartening trend, and also in a sense the perfect response to the VUCA world, or volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world that we live in.
Absolutely, Karthik and Krishnan, and thanks for having me here. And you know, you're absolutely right that we are living in very, very exciting times. And I think
exciting is a nice word, Monica. It's like the Chinese proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times." We're living in interesting times, don't we? 30-something board members. Who would have thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I mean, let me just give you a context on what's really happening. I think you may have read about something I you know, spoke about just over this weekend to another publication. There are about 1,600 board members across the India Inc. listed companies whose second terms are coming to an end in the next 12 to 18 months. And that's very, very relevant, because what normally would have been a threat to corporate governance sustenance has actually become an opportunity. You know, because this is a time to reboot, and frankly, companies are becoming very, very aware that their boards also need to reflect what the mix of their employees and customers is. And as you know, we are a young country. You know, we actually have a large population of Gen Zs and now millennials, and they have completely different way of thinking, behaving, you know, leading, etc. And that's why the boards are getting younger. Clearly, organizations are wanting to, and as we all know, board is a strategic asset, right? That is pretty much the guiding beacon of an organization. And therefore, the boards are getting younger, just as management teams are, because they want to also understand what the new gen really thinks and wants to be like.
But Monica, you know, conventional wisdom told us that you've got to be grey-haired or bald. Well, I'm not that old, I'm bald, but you needed some sort of experience, and you needed decades of diverse experience to be able to strategically draw up a vision of an organization. And that seems to be something that is getting replaced by the youth. In your experience, and you deal with personnel of all levels at your company and at your client's end. So, you know, given your experience, while youth would understand the needs of the youth, would the youth have the right experience to draw up the right business strategies and corporate governance at a time? And this context is important because at a time that we've seen startups which are mostly run by the youth flounder on practically everything from business strategy to corporate governance. I mean, I don't want to generalize it, but if 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 startups don't make it, there's got to be a reason, and 8 seems to be one of them.
So that's a great point, Karthik, you make, but just remember that board is a body of directors. It's not just one individual.
Sure.
So while boards are inducting young directors who are in their 30s, early 40s, but I think they are very, very smartly and very meaningfully ensuring that there is youthful vigor, there is gender diversity, there is skill diversity, and there is maturity of age and wisdom. So overall, I would say it's actually a good strategy, rather than to say, okay, you know, the youths have often floundered and lots of startups have floundered. But equally, I mean, hey, let's face it, Mr. Obama was president of the United States of America at the age of 40.
Yeah.
You can't get a bigger job than it.
right? And we are getting younger prime ministers as well in the United Kingdom. The youngest prime minister that they've had as well. It's all getting younger for sure. But the question here is that in terms of work culture, it will be a challenge to when you have a board where one half or at least the overwhelming majority is in the 50s, 60s, and the other half is in the 30s. Everything from food and beverage consumption habits to preference in air conditioning is going to be a problem. Practically speaking.
Corporate strategy.
Yeah.
Corporate strategy.
How do you put these vastly different age groups together in one room?
I think it's a misnomer that age and wisdom or age and maturity are mutually exclusive. I would say that when we put together a board, while their ages might vary, their genders might vary, the skill set might vary, there is a commonality in terms of purpose, there is a commonality in terms of wisdom, and there is a commonality in ways, what we call their traits and drivers. That's a very conferi term. Sorry for bringing that in. But you actually assess for those commonalities and for those, before we actually put together a board of directors.
Monica, just help us also arrive at this another sort of conclusion here, that is it fair to assume that most of these youngsters are part of the family or related to the family running these businesses, or are these organically picked up on merit? How does the youth in the board look like today as far as their generational sort of lineage with the promoters?
Fair enough. Just to add to that question, because I'll tell you what, I've been watching social media ads come up where they say you can actually take certificate courses to become independent board directors. Now that's being offered to people at large, general public, whoever wants to take up that course and become an independent board member. So if you're going to evolve to a stage where we're going to have young people being given a seat on the board because of a little quota for young people on the board, how is it going to work? Are you going to see more family business members taking precedence over those from the fair competition category?
Well, I think we are confusing a board of director with an independent director.
Okay.
So a lot of the family prodigal sons and daughters are typically maker for what you call a non-executive director,
right?
Or a nominee director. Whereas what we are looking for, or what we help India Inc. find for, and that's where I think one of the examples is Arjun Mohan, for instance, who is the former CEO of Upgrad. He's 37, but he's already on 2-3 boards of diverse kind of organizations, as an example. So I think even at independent director level, there is a sort of need that the organizations are feeling to get younger talent in or younger leaders in. But the two are diverse sets. The promoters do induct the family members as to groom them to be eventual leaders, but the independent directors are also getting younger.
It's all heading in the young direction is the word coming in. Thank you so much, Monica, for taking time out to speak with us here on Business Plus on News9 Live. Pleasure having you. Hope to keep having you again and again on the show going forward as well, on as many varied and interesting topics that we can talk to you about. But for now, we'll let you go. Thank you so much, Karthik. And with that, we have completely run out of time, really, on the show. It's been a pleasure having you on the show as well. The wrap is from my side. This is Krishna Kumar signing off. Keep it with News9 Live.
BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The Warship Killer. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Pakistan is
actually genociding Baloch people. So being Baloch is a crime. If you are a Baloch, it means in the eyes of Pakistan, you don't have any right to live.
The Chinese and Pakistanis are colonizing the Baloch and exploiting their resources.
The Baloch armed struggle will continue unless China withdraws, Pakistan military withdraws from Balochistan, and give Baloch complete authority to decide for themselves.
The Baloch feel that if they don't act now, they will become marginalized.
What lies ahead for Balochistan?
Balochistan, Bangladesh 2.0, streaming now.
Ruthless, ambitious, manipulative, powerful. That's how the world knows Xi Jinping. And he's got even more powerful now. What drives China's supreme leader? He's the man who has threatened to annex Taiwan. He has torn up 30 years of border agreements with India. He wants to make China the biggest player in the history of the world by 2048. But what is Xi Jinping thinking? What shaped him? What's made him the most feared Chinese leader since Mao Zedong? A few key events in his childhood shaped his personality. When Xi was 10, the Chinese Communist Party purged his father, Mao's trusted lieutenant, Shi Zongjun.
Well, he was born with a silver spoon. He was the son of Shi Chungshun, who was a revolutionary who participated in the revolutionary campaigns in 1930s and 1940s. He studied in one of the most elitist schools in Beijing, reserved for the party cadets and the army cadets children. He also joined the Tsinghua University, which is considered to be #1 even today. Tsinghua University is like an IIT in India. Xi Jinping was sent to the villages as part of the overall campaign, and he was in a village conducting the Cultural Revolution campaign.
In 1966, the Red Guards ransacked the Xi household, forcing his sister to commit suicide and his mother to denounce her husband. Xi was then sent away to work in far-off Lianghihe village in Shaanxi province. Xi didn't flee abroad like his friends. Instead, he entered the CCP, the very party that had punished his father. Over the next 4 decades, he worked his way up the ladder. In 2012, he was elected General Secretary of the CCP, making him the paramount leader of China. At its 20th National Congress in Beijing, Xi is on the brink of making history. The party is likely to endorse him for the 3rd time since he took over. He has led China to become the world's 2nd largest economy with an army that most countries, especially India, view as a threat. What Xi did a few days after he took charge in 2012 should give us a sense of what goes on in his mind today.
从上海石窟门到嘉兴南湖
He took over the power in 2012. Xi Jinping had centralized his powers extensively, and he decimated several factions within the rival factions within the party. So in this interregnum, he was able to remove many of the influences of the factional leaders.
You know, every time there's a change of leadership in China, there is a hope, particularly from the Western analysts that you get to see, to say that, you know, this gentleman, the new dispensation will bring in more democratization, more opening up, etc., etc. That seems to have been belied as far as Mr. Xi Jinping is concerned.
The newly appointed leader took the hammer to the People's Liberation Army, the party, the bureaucracy, and Chinese universities. He did this through a brutal anti-corruption drive, ideological straitjacketing, and an overhaul of power structures. He is first leader after Mao Zedong to make a public appearance in combat uniform. What does this mean?
A lot of people have said that he is taking China back to the Mao days. The kind of procedural things that he is setting up, the kind of anti-corruption that he is doing, the kind of common prosperity that he is talking about, the kind of dual circulation to increase the domestic consumption that he is talking about.
So for the 100 years of the People's Republic of China, his objective is to that China becomes the power number one economically, but also militarily. And Xi Jinping believes that his system of governance is far superior than to the Western democracy, particularly the Indian democracy, which he considers as very chaotic and unable to deliver the goods.
What Xi did to the army gives a hint of what was to unfold over the next 10 years. By 2014, he restructured rank and file. Over 40,000 officers of the PLA were dismissed and jailed on various charges of corruption.
Changed all the systems simultaneously in one go. Generally, militaries don't do that.
He then filled the centers of power with those blindly loyal to him. This ensured that the PLA became subservient to him and the CCP. By the time he was done, China had turned into the most totalitarian state it had ever been. Xi's grand ambition is clear when he speaks of his three big projects: the rejuvenation of the great Chinese nation, to make China a major power with pioneering global influence, and creating a community of common destiny.
He is talking about you should work like there's no tomorrow. Okay, so they'll continue to push for it. That is one. The second thing is that he is trying to get China to see what he talked about Chinese dream. You know, when he came to power, he talked about Chinese dream, and he also talked about national rejuvenation. So Chinese dream looks more towards internal issues plus increasing influence of China abroad, whereas national rejuvenation looks at expanding the influence outward.
Despite getting a third term, Xi has his share of challenges. The global slowdown has forced Xi to slash government wages by up to 30%. Another big domestic worry is the powerful princelings, China's entrepreneurs who contribute up to 80% of the country's employment. Xi's totalitarianism has made them anxious. He will have to find ways to keep the princelings quiet. The pitfalls are even greater overseas.
The Americans have been supporting Taiwan. In the recent Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, the Chinese military had conducted exercises closer to Taiwan, and it appeared that China is about to invade, taking a cue from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The second challenge is in relation to Senkaku Islands with Japan, the South China Sea Islands dispute with Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, Brunei, and other countries.
Xi will also have to deal with its biggest global adversary, the US, against which China stands at odds when it comes to Taiwan, the South China Sea, and most recently, the war in Ukraine. If the US does decide to up the ante and impose sanctions, CCP officials fear that both the Chinese economy and 40 million of their own cadre will be severely hit. This has created a powerful opposing force in the Indo-Pacific. India, Japan, and Australia have all said that they will not stand for China becoming the regional overlord. Xi has made it clear that China will not back down from its aggressive foreign policy positions.
But we may likely to see Xi Jinping conducting a nationalist, highly nationalist rhetoric on India, reviving the East India Company images on the century of humiliation, etc., and increasing the nationalist rhetoric on India. So this is an extreme position that he is likely to take.
Yes, it's 2.5 years, nearly 2.5 years that the Chinese, the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, has come into 4 or 5 places in Ladakh, and though agreements have been found for 3 or 4 places.
He wants to redraw China's borders and recover territories he believes are rightfully theirs. This directly impacts India. This means China will continue to press its claims over Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh and several pockets of land along the border, except more skirmishes, pitched battles, and diplomatic wrangling. Xi won't find it easy to achieve these lofty ambitions, but one thing is certain. Seeing how he has amassed power and imposed his will on the most powerful institutions in China and abroad, Xi Jinping will make it hard for the world to ignore him for the next 5 years at least.
With all this gear, you must be wondering if I'm climbing a mountain. Well, let me give you a wider look of this place. This is Asia's largest mountain of shame.
A mountain of waste, almost the height of the Qutub Minar.
When you enter capital cities of some of the biggest countries in the world, you don't have 3 garbage mountains waiting to welcome you, depending on whichever side of the city you enter from.
The thing is that a lot of times we talk about landfills only when there's a fire at the landfill. You need to understand that a landfill is at fire almost throughout the year. It's only when the firefighters are not able to douse the fire is when it actually catches the nation's attention, the city's attention, or media attention.
The towering landfills worsen one of Delhi's biggest problems: pollution.
यहाँ पर आप रात को आओ, दिन में आओ, आप 1 घंटे बैठ नहीं सकते बाहर। इतनी धूल, प्रदूषण, महक, आप खाना भी नहीं खा सकते बाहर बैठ के।
Life around the landfill is a curse.
हमारे घर में जो बड़े हैं, उन्हें अस्थमा के वो पेशेंट है। आए दिन उनको नेबुलाइजर लगाना पड़ता है।
डॉक्टर ने मुझे ये चीज बोला कि यहाँ का एरिया छोड़ के कहीं और चाहिए।
Delhi's garbage mountains are now a fetid symbol of the national capital's trash problem. The question is, who is to be blamed? Watch Delhi's Garbage Mountains. Streaming on News9 Plus for the Genflix.
He thought he could outlast us. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room.
Who will blink first?
So far from preventing the expansion of NATO, Russian actions have actually resulted in the expansion of NATO.
It's a mess for Russia and it's a mess for the Western world, for NATO and the United States.
Putin is a dictator, and if he loses, that means the end of his regime.
and probably of him personally. So he has to keep going.
Year 2, no end in sight. Streaming now.
Namaskaram, you are with the South Indian. Someone was asking me, how come you're always the first to tell us what is really going on in the South? That's because we are bothered about you. We may be sitting far away in the capital, but we are always the first to tell you what's going on today. It's particularly a great day because the poll bugle has been sounded in Telangana. And guess what? It was on expected lines. Bharat Rashtra Samiti or BRS President Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao, popularly known as KCR, released the party's first list of contesting MLA candidates for the upcoming state assembly polls. You know why I said expected? Because much like in 2018, KCR by releasing the list has the first mover's advantage, and second, as it is well known about him, KCR chose the auspicious day of Shravana Somavara to make the announcement. A lot of us in the South know what it means. Those who believe, those who do not believe, that's also fine. In the South, we are rather eclectic, each to his own. Chief Minister KCR has finalized the list of candidates for nearly 90% of the assembly constituencies. Of the 119 seats, 115 names are now confirmed, 4 names are so far pending, and 7 changes have also been made. Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao will contest from 2 assembly constituencies, namely Gajwel and Kammareddy districts, while announcing the changes as follows. He said there are only 7 changes in the list, namely Korutla, Uppal, Vemulavada, Khanapur, Asifabad, Vaira both. In Vemulavada assembly constituency, sitting MLA Chennamaneni Ramesh will not be given a ticket. KCR said the BRS leader instead finalized Chalmeda Lakshmi Narsimha Rao's name for the constituencies. In Uppal, Bandaru Lakshmi Reddy will get the ticket as opposed to the sitting MLA Beti Subhash Reddy. If K. Chandrasekhar Rao or KCR makes it this time, then it shall of course be a hat-trick, and no wonder then that he has apparently taken immense measures, immense care to have an extremely comprehensive list which takes into account all the parameters of winnability. Let's debate with our experts as to how they see this as a list, although list alone, we all know, does not ensure victory in electoral politics. It's a lot of other things. It's a combination of different things. But as of now, today, the first list is out and the South Indian will discuss it with the rest of the South Indians. But before that, the South Indian of the day, K. Chandrasekhar Rao. Let's listen into what he has to say.
వాళ్ళు అభ్యర్థిస్తే మంచిది అని చెప్పి అతను కూడా అక్కడ యాక్టివ్గా డాక్టర్ సంజయ్ పనిచేస్తూ ఉన్నాడు. దాని ద్వారా వాళ్ళ ఇంటి విషయం అది ఆ ఎమ్మెల్యే గారి కోరిక మేరకే వారి తనిఖీ ఇవ్వడం జరుగుతూ ఉంది. మిగతా అన్ని కూడా పాతవి ఒక 4 చోట్ల.
A. Sai Shekhar, senior journalist and political analyst, is joining us on the broadcast. Shyam Prasad Meka, who is a political analyst, will also be joining. Bhanu Chandra Nagaranjan, political analyst, is also with us right now. Let's just go say hello to the 2. I think there are 2 who have joined. Sai Shekhar is here, of course, and also Mr. Nagaranjan. A very, very warm welcome to both of you. Sai, first is, before we dwell into what happened, why it happened, I want you to tell the viewers about this list. Isn't it true that KCR has taken immense care to see that he has a solid, layered list, as it were?
As I understand, he is ready with this list long ago.
Oh.
And it's not a last minute exercise or anything like that. And he, in fact, they have not made any official announcement that they would be announcing the list of candidates today. But then there were sufficient feelers that were sent to the media that today the Chief Minister is likely to announce the list of candidates, which means he is prepared for this, and he has kept 4 seats in abeyance. The list of nominees for 4 assembly seats in abeyance, but he has all the rest of the 115 he has announced. And one not very surprising move is that he is seeking election from 2 assembly constituencies. One is his native Gajwel and another is Kamareddy. And on the expected lines, Dr. Sanjay has been nominated from Korutla. He is a very world-renowned spine surgeon. And the other candidates, also about 7 candidates he has changed. And this morning, much to his surprise or chagrin, one of his loyalist MLAs, Mainampalli Hanumantrao from Malkajgiri constituency, he has spoken very ill of the finance minister Harish Rao.
Harish Rao, yes.
And he wanted himself to be nominated from Malkajgiri and his son to be nominated from Medak. And that was anyway not acceded to by the chief minister. And during the interaction, then people asked him whether Mainampalli would continue to be the BRS candidate. The chief minister said if it was the party's line, yes, he would be the BRS candidate. Otherwise, it is his choice, which means he kept the door ajar. And he also took care that the list is not hard and fast, in the sense that if necessary, there could be some changes. That is a warning or taunt to the roughnecks who want to, create a havoc.
Yeah, but before I go to Nagaranjan, I'm Mr. Nagaranjan, I want to ask you, Sai, that, keeping Gajwel and the other Kamareddy, is it also because you should tell us, because Revant Reddy has been constantly challenging him and saying that, Gajwel, okay, you know this, you know it very well. See, the thing is that, what is the purpose of fighting it from both? Considering that this man, of course, there is anti-incumbency. You and I know that nothing is set in stone so far as electoral politics is concerned. We've got results wrong, many a time. But tell me, what is the reason for him to fight from 2 places, Sai Shekhar?
Kamareddy comes under Nizamabad Lok Sabha seat, which is likely to be contested by Kavita in the upcoming Lok Sabha elections. And Kavita has made her intention clear already. And last time she has lost the election. And so Chief Minister's presence, perhaps if he retains that seat, he is sure to win both seats. And if he retains that seat, naturally, that will boost the morale of the candidate contesting from Nizamabad Lok Sabha seat. This could be one reason, not that intentionally he wants to do this. But then initially my information was that KCR was considering contesting from Nalgonda, Erstwhile Nalgonda district, leaving Gajwel, because he wanted Nalgonda district is a Congress bastion. Uttam Kumar Reddy is from there, Komat Reddy Venkat Reddy is from there. Many, the Komat Reddy, Rajgopal Reddy, everyone, many Congress strongmen are there from Nalgonda district, as well Nalgonda district. So people thought KCR would go and contest there. That is why Revant Reddy wanted to wean away KCR from seeking an election.
Sai, what you said about him keeping the seat warm for his daughter, he's actually falling into the trap of Parivarvad, which Narendra Modi has accused him of doing. I'll come to you later.
Today, Amit Shah, one second, Sudha. Today, Amit Shah said on merits we would also consider people from dynasties and families, but they should have merit. So, Kavita and KTR and Harish Rao have participated in the Telangana agitation. It's not as if, they were directly airdropped from KCR.
Sure. That's what the Congress also says. Shyam Prasad Meka is here. Hi, Shyam. I'll come to you in a bit. They say that we have spilt our blood for this nation. Starting from Mrs. Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, they say that we have made sacrifices. So therefore, this dynastic thing does not stick, but it does for the opposition. I'm not saying for the electorate. Bhanuchandar, what do you make of the list? Do you think that this is a list which is pretty much on what was expected? Because see, there are some little bit of problems, like he spoke about Hanumantrao, very, very strong words that he has used against Harish Rao. He has said, what does he think of himself? himself. I know where he came. He came here with a trunk. I will expose him, while even trying to, you know, put up a very, very brave front for Rohit Rao, his own son. I am asking you that, is this list taking into account what is most important, which KCR went to town saying, I have done a survey. I know what is the kind of wind that is blowing against apparently every candidate. You know, people who have sexual harassment cases against them, people who have even a citizenship kind of a problem against them, they've all been asked to sit down. So according to you, is this list fulfilling what KCR was wanting to do? Bhanuchandar Nagaranjan.
So this week seems to be that time when political parties are starting to play on the front foot. You could see that BJP released its list in Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh even before elections were announced. So I think BRS is also following the same route. But I think BRS has sort of taken a gamble, I would say, in announcing 115 candidates and with only 7 changes. So because, like you mentioned in your initial bit, there is massive anti-incumbency against the BRS.
Yes.
They've been there for two terms. So he's basically gambling and saying that I'm going to go with the same members. Let's see what happens. So that, I think, is a huge